December 3rd, 2025. Welcome back to the GFR, the Global Financial Reset Show, Surviving and Thriving the Transition. Joining me today are my guests, Will Barney and Bill Armour. Joining me next week is Rob Cunningham, first time in the GFR, and SG and On returns. We will also listen today to a brief clip from Juan O'Savin concerning the US dollar. It's a bombshell claim that Juan has made. You can take it to the bank, actually take it to the metals dealer. The bombshell claim is 17,000 to 100,000 pallets of 100 million US dollars in cash exists worldwide, and Juan's team has their eyes on those pallets literally. And Juan speaks about it being was part of the globalist plan to collapse the dollar and forced us into the digital currency, that central bank digital currency that President Trump put a bill in motion in 2026 effective to make sure we, the people, we the patriots, are not part of that program. Here's a snippet of that clip from Juan O'Savin, and I'll be back in just 30 seconds.
I've tracked personally 17,000 pallets of 100 million each that I know where they're at. They physically exist. I've had people with eyes on in the room verifying. 17,000 pallets with $100 million in US cash on each pallet.
Wow.
Beyond that, there's 5,000 pallets that I'm fairly comfortable exist, but we haven't had anybody in the room actually to see those particular pallets.
We will listen to the rest of that clip a little bit later in the broadcast so we can have our guest weigh in on that. There's a hot mic somewhere to my producer. There's a hot mic. You got to cut the mics. Thank you very much. Sorry for the disturbance, folks. If you missed the free masterclass that you see on the screen with Dr. Joseph Peck's organization, Empower 2000, great folks, a link has been placed in the Rumble show notes, I hope so, as well as on the websites wealthcoachuniversity.com and jmcbroadcasting.com at your leisure. Check out this free masterclass. It's there for you to view, and I strongly suggest everyone view this, particularly those with investable assets and or cash to protect. All right, let's get right into it. Will Barney. Will brings over 19 years of experience in the banking sector, where he has developed a strong specialization in structuring funding for commercial projects on a global scale. His career has been characterized by successful collaborations with banks to syndicate and finance commercial ventures, often involving substantial financial commitments that exceeded tens of millions of dollars. Will's professional journey encompasses significant roles within both commercial banks and private equity firms, where he has consistently delivered tailored solutions to meet the needs of large-scale commercial projects. I may add to this, Will is very aware of what's going on in the dawning of the golden age, and I'm very excited to have Will back. And earlier in his career, he was also involved in entertainment. Before embarking on his career in banking, Will gained valuable experience in the entertainment industry. His work encompassed professional recording, concert production, and television production as an audio engineer, enabling him to develop a unique skill set and perspective that he later applied to his roles in business. He also had a background in construction. Will's early exposure, pardon me, folks, I'm working through the congestion still. Will's early exposure to the building industry began during his upbringing as the son of a general contractor. Growing up on construction sites, sort of as President Trump did, he acquired firsthand knowledge of various aspects of construction, further broadening his understanding of commercial projects from the ground up. Please welcome back Will Barney. We got a lot to jump into. Well,
so good to be with
there
you
he
again.
is. Thanks for being here, Will. It's good to see you. There's a lot going on. Certainly weigh in on whatever you like, but I'm going to kick our conversation off with this. President Trump, and to folks that watch this weekly, thank you for returning, and thank you for sharing the show. By the way, folks, we had 3 million collective views from the 9 shows. We only publish a total of 9 broadcasts a month right now at JMC Broadcasting, garnishing over 3 million views. Thank you for following, liking, and sharing our work. We bring in great guests like Will, which is the reasons our shows are growing in the marketplace, if you will. So anyway, President Trump, and I mention this each week because it's so big, and each week we get more and more information and hat tips, if you will, from the president and team. President Trump is ending the Federal Reserve and the federal income tax. This is now well in motion as I see it. President Trump, just in the past couple of days, has stated, and I quote the president, quote, "I believe in the not too distant future, you won't have income tax to pay because the money we're taking in is so great, we're not going to have income tax to pay." End quote, President Donald J. Trump in the last 48 hours. He is also on the record stating, quote, "U.S. may completely cut income tax due to tariff revenue." So he's saying the same thing in many different ways, in many different platforms, in many different sound bites. So, Will, how and when do you see this playing out from the dots you're connecting and the very overt statements the president and his administration is making?
Well, it's interesting what the president's saying. Most of what he says is for people asleep. It's not for the conscious awake, which is probably most of your audience.
Correct.
The IRS, which is a tax collection agency for the Federal Reserve, they're owned by the Federal Reserve. They are a corporation. If you go and look the public records, you cannot find an act of Congress that created them. Okay. So they will go away when the Federal Reserve goes away. They're hand in glove and they go away together. And he's giving everybody a heads up of what is coming. Now, the reason he talks so much about the tariff revenue is it's much easier for people to understand that that's a plausible reason why you wouldn't need income tax anymore. But the reality is, for those that know where the money goes, every dollar of income tax is taken in, never touches a government account anyway. It goes directly to the Federal Reserve. In the past, this is how it's been done for decades. The Federal Reserve would then send it offshore where it gets divided up. And you would have a third going to the Vatican, a third goes to the Crown, and the other third gets divided among all the bankers as your spoils of war. So this has been going on a long time, and good proof of this is if you look at the budgets that are given out by Congress every year, they have in the budget the interest that's paid on the national debt. If the income tax is paying the national debt, why are they budgeting out of their amount? Most people don't ask these questions. They didn't know what was going on. So when you realize that the income tax has been like a vacuum sucking trillions of dollars and hundreds of billions every year out of the economy, it leaves the country. It's not being recirculated. If the money was going to government, it would go back into payrolls, go back into people that work for the government. It gets recirculated automatically. So this is going to be a dynamic change that occurs when the country is no longer sending money out the door, but rather it's rebuilding the economy within it. And so it's really interesting how the president talks about these things, because he uses language that he knows people that don't know this can understand, that they can get, okay, that's a plausible reason why we would get rid of it. But in reality, there's no reason to have it. It's really like renting the Federal Reserve currency. It's like the rent we pay, which is remarkable. More astonishing
Spot on.
is that it's not in one country. So every country that has a central bank is owned by the same bankers, 180 plus countries, and they all had a tax agency doing the identical thing. So the money was going to them, and then they would loan money out to the governments. They would give them loans, and those loans were created with the mouse click. So they didn't have value in it. They would just click a mouse. Oh, there's your $1 trillion. And then we want the hard work of the American people, or the people of Canada, or the people of Thailand, or the people of anywhere to pay it back. And it was inappropriate what was going on, and it's ending. Now, with that as a overview, I don't want everybody to think that we end this on Friday. There is steps that have to be taken so that we have the ability to continue on relatively smoothly without crashing the entire system. So if you watch, you're going to see President Trump continue to put various aspects of what many in the Patriot community call Nasara or Jasara into place. You'll never hear him mention these words. He will not
That's
talk about
correct.
it because it's been maligned everywhere, all over the internet. So if you just watch the actions, though, they're going to be
Yes.
actions of implementation of that very thing.
I agree. Spot on analysis. Thank you, Will. You know what? God is a just God, and boy, oh boy, our time has come. Let's segue from God to Elon Musk. What a segue that is, right? But Elon Musk recently stated this, and I quote, "I am convinced almost all of the $38 trillion of national debt, the federal debt, is due to fraud." Now, he's not the only one saying this. I'm well aware of this, and so is everybody else that has done the homework. But you've got a voice like Musk, again, to the target audience, we call them, that they'll buy into it much easier, coming from someone who was, once heavy on the left. So that is due to debt. That debt is due to fraud. So from fraudulent wars, as you've alluded to, from fraudulent climate initiatives, fraudulent benefits for illegals, fraudulent foreign aid, and on, as Will mentioned. The American people, Elon says, have been robbed. And that's to solidify your points, Will, that you've just stated. I want to jump into crypto. My audience knows me well, especially those who've been following me for 10 years. Crypto is new to us all, and certainly new to me. It's an area I do not have a level of expertise in that I do in other areas. And that's why I bring on guests like you and many others. Let's discuss crypto. There's been a recent big, and there's a lot of things I want to get into, but there's been a recent big correction in crypto right now. What do you believe is the cause for this correction? And then I want to get into some other aspects of crypto. But if you can just take that question on now, and I appreciate it, Will.
Well, we've had massive adjustments, and some of them are deliberate. If you look at the crypto coins that are ISO certified coins, they're purposely being held down. If you've been watching, their value is very minimal. They're not running up into the high numbers like Bitcoin and Ethereum, which are not even compatible with the ISO 20022 specification. What that specification is it's a requirement of how financial transactions should be reported. The United States went live with this standard on 14th of July of 2025. And if you go back, if you got the time machine, you want to go back on the internet, you can see it. It showed up on the Federal Reserve's website on July 14th, that everybody's compliant now in the United States. But then they had another date, which was November 22nd, where they wanted the rest of the world to be compliant. The reason for that was that if you're going to have a new financial system, you're going to have everybody trading with each other. They all need to report exactly the same. Otherwise, you can't have integration with trade across borders. So this is an important thing. So what's happening with the crypto? Why suddenly the prices of XRP and XLM and all of these start dropping? What it's doing is it's taking all the speculators in the market that are trying to juice the system, and they're giving them something to think about. And a lot of them just cashed out. They're like, this is crazy. I'm getting out of this. And believe me when I say that some of these purges are deliberate. Now, what most people don't know is on the flip side of that, there were some nefarious people trying to buy up what people were unloading. And so we're going to continue to watch that. The interesting thing is the ledgers are transparent. So everybody knows who bought what and when and where they were when they bought it, because that's how it's recorded. So I'm not too concerned about prices dropping with any coin that is meeting the ISO specification. The reality is that is the specification of the future. I would be more concerned about people sitting in coins that are not compliant, because what are they going to do when the whole world says you can't exchange that for money? And that could
big
happen.
problem. Absolutely. Well, great stuff, Will. I want to ask you, dive a little micro into this now. President Trump recently stated this, and again, I quote the president, quote, crypto will make the US dollar stronger, and it's good for our country. All right, simple quote, but important. That's an endorsement, if you will, for crypto from the president himself. Now, of course, Eric Trump, I'm sure many of our viewers have seen the video footage he shared with the world. Pardon me, walking through what looked to me like a warehouse of servers mining Bitcoin and giving us some education on that. He's been all over the mainstream news, financial channels, and certainly in the new media space. American Bitcoin, I think, is the name of the Trump company now. With having said that, what do you make of Bitcoin? I mean, if the Trumps are putting all this money and attention and shining a light on Bitcoin, what role does it have moving forward?
It's going to be hard to see what that role is going to be in my mind, because I look at this practically, and I have experience with Bitcoin. I've used it, I've bought and I've sold Bitcoin. The problem that I have with Bitcoin is it's clumsy, it's slow. I think the fastest transaction I ever did on Bitcoin was 21 minutes. The fastest one I ever did on XLM or XRP was 3.5 seconds. There's not
Big
even a
difference.
contest here. Okay.
Right.
And that's full
Yeah.
settlement. So how do you take hundreds of millions, billions of people all transacting on a blockchain and think that they're all going to wait 30 minutes or whatever to conclude their transactions when somebody else is offering it in seconds? Going to be very difficult. Now, one of the things that's interesting about Bitcoin is that it's been the number one currency of human trafficking for the last 10 years across the world, because it has some anonymity, some privacy to how it's done. It's been used by nefarious people. There's been a couple other currencies too. I think Ethereum is next in line. But Bitcoin's been used predominantly for that. And they want the values to be high because they want to do well with this coin. However, if you look at what statements that Trump made very early in the year, right after becoming president, he and Secretary Bessent, Treasury Secretary, said that Bitcoin would be usable to pay the national debt. Now, 6 months later, in August, Secretary Bessent said the country would no longer be buying Bitcoin, but it would acquire them through confiscation for those that are doing nefarious things. Very interesting. They're still going to keep a Bitcoin bank, if you will, a bank of Bitcoin. But what are they going to use it for? They're going to use the fiat bank Bitcoin to pay off the fiat fake Federal Reserve. It's just one of the tools
Wonderful.
that they will use. And it'll cancel everything out. Now, you mentioned Elon Musk a bit ago, saying
Yeah.
the Federal Reserve was fraudulent in what it did. It is. As I mentioned, they make money with a mouse click, right? It's kind of like you taking a piece of paper and writing on it $10,000 and counting it to your bank and saying, that's my car payment. And if they take
No
it,
kidding.
they're crazy, right?
Yes.
But we take their money and there's no value backing it. And then they want us to repay that same currency back to them
Unbelievable.
with our labor and everything else. So there's a lot that the world has to understand about where we've been. And I think as you understand that, it only makes it more exciting where we're going. Because
Absolutely.
crypto, and for blockchain specifically, is going to be the methodology of transparency. Now, being a recovering banker like myself, I saw
Yes.
that in the back screens, there's a lot of weird stuff that goes on. Okay. The banks have been the biggest money launderers on the planet. I hate to say that. Okay.
It's true.
But it's true. But when everything goes to blockchain ledger, there is complete transparency and nothing can be hidden anymore. So it just stops all of that right in its tracks. And I think that that's a necessary thing because the best security is actually transparency. I hope that
Yes,
helps.
you know, when you commented on it does help quite a bit. Thanks, Will. You spoke moments ago about your views on Bitcoin and how what's really potentially happening behind the scenes and how it'll play out. And it's really light bulbs went off for me. It's a series of, again, of multiple chess moves that are being made in this strategic war that we're fighting, and it's very encouraging. I've also come to understand that there are perhaps 7, maybe 8 cryptos worthy of looking into and acquiring. Why 7 or 8? Can you name some of them? And which ones would you favor and why?
Yeah, so the only coins that I favor currently are the ones that meet the ISO specification 20022. So the same thing that the banks had to do, we want crypto to be on the same spec because basically that the banks had to do it first. And the reason is because when we switched to that, you're not going to be able to move money through the banks if they weren't compliant. Okay. So the banks wouldn't be able to touch the new money. Now they can. That way, if they've got customers that are don't know anything about crypto and all they want to do is write checks, well, that'll still be available to them, at least for a period of time while they learn. And that's why the banks had to get compliant. But as we look at the 8, and anybody can Google this, there are 8 coins that are meeting that specification. 2 years ago, we went live with ISO 20022 on the 19th of November by the SWIFT and Bank of America and Chase and Wells Fargo all claimed they went live on the same day. I was trying to figure out how did SWIFT get compliant with this standard? And then I went to their website. Well, they just told us how they did it. They went to XLM and XLM helped them be compliant because XLM was already compliant. I thought this is hilarious. They're actually using XLM to move the value. But why not? XLM moves nearly as fast as XRP in seconds. It only made sense that Swift would use that. Now, Swift is using some other networks too. They're using Ethereum and a couple other ones. But XLM obviously works faster than any of the other ones that they use. So as we look at crypto, what you need to look at is, and what's the most important thing in my mind, is utility. What can I do with this digital coin 5 years from now, 10 years from now? Because if it's not meeting the standard to be usable or to be convertible to actual dollars, it's not of much use to me. So that's why I say I only stick with the ISO coins because I know they will have a future. Hope that helps.
Yeah, great information. Thank you, Will. I want to ask you something. You know, maybe a silly, simple question, but keep it simple, sweetheart. Keep it simple, stupid. Keep it simple, Sam. Sometimes is a good thing to do. I want to ask this question. I've been pondering this. So, the president is against the central bank digital currency. We know there's a bill set forth active in 2026, as I've come to understand, that says, you know, hey, we don't want nothing to do with that. Okay. Now, we have a Federal Reserve central bank system. And as you said, the thuggery collection agency, part and parcel, if you will. So we have a central bank system. The president is saying, hey, we're not going there. Effective legally and officially in 2026. We are, Will, as you well know, at war. Course correction for all of humanity, but we'll keep it right here in America for the moment, to restore our constitutional republic and our sovereignty as individuals and as a nation. That's kind of the big picture of what we're doing. And in this war, there are many, many compartmentalized battles. One of those compartmentalized battles is, of course, what we're discussing right now, a central bank digital currency versus not. Okay. Now, peripherally, 100,000-foot view, dollar's going to maybe get plummeted further down. Dollar won't go away. Dollar will be restored. Dollar will be backed by gold, silver, perhaps other commodities, into a stable coin, into a QFS, and we can discuss that later. Assuming, and the reason I brought it up is now we have two things to compare. We have a central bank digital currency, which the central banks want to control the depositors' money, and then perhaps add in a something similar to the Chinese credit score system. So there's that. There's what they want. And in the war, there's always an opponent. Well, what we want is what I've just defined. My question is, again, I'm keeping it simple, Sam. With a law that's going into effect, that's kind of nice. I like that. However, once we officially have severed the need and use and relationship with the Federal Reserve and the IRS, which we can see is coming, when that happens, what happens to the entire central bank system? Bank and International Settlements, the central bank system that you talked about in 180 countries. We've moved into this system. So yes, some nations will come in if they want to move money quickly and get things done. But what does the enemy is sitting there on a big open field now? What are they going to do with all the people that still have their money in banks? Can they do their central bank digital currency? Can they do the trajectory that they're presently on? Even though there was a law that said you can't, but if we have no Federal Reserve and we have no relationship with those entities, what do you think is going to happen? This may be a dumb question, but people are asking me of this, and it's
Well,
got
there's
me
a couple
thinking.
of ways.
What do you?
Couple of ways this plays out. But if you look at what's going on, the Treasury has spent the last 8 months digitizing all their systems. They've upgraded everything. They got everything upgraded by the 30th of September, which was the same day that Trump had a big meeting with the entire military brass, every flag officer.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
He reset the entire military, and some of them didn't walk out of the room except in handcuffs. That's not being talked about, but we know that happened. That meeting was important because you can't restore the country if you don't first have the military. That's how the country started. We had an army before we ever had a constitution officially signed. So we're replaying that in the restoration. Now, why do I bring this up? I bring it up because what the Treasury's doing and the military is doing is all leading us to a restoration. What it's going to mean, though, for banks is that the banks are no longer going to be coordinating with the Federal Reserve. They now have to answer to the Treasury. The Treasury will be the keeper of banking rules and regulations. So this is going to be a very different change for them. There are many suggesting that we're well down the road with this, that the Federal Reserve may be such a mess that there was language that Trump talked about, and Secretary, I'm not talking to the current secretary, but Secretary Steve Mnuchin in 2020, the last year of his first presidency, that suggested that during COVID, the government absorbed the Federal Reserve and nationalized it.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
If that actually occurred, and I haven't seen the documentation on it, but there seems to be a lot of suggestion that's occurring, then what we're watching is a dramatization that just leads us step by step to where this really goes, which means the Treasury's running everything now.
Mm-hmm.
Now, doesn't mean there isn't ill intent, some very maleficent people out there trying to do great things like what you said with Juan, and you're probably going to play that video later about cash everywhere that could just crash the system. If that were to occur, we might accelerate when we launch. But the reality is, if anybody watched the president, how he keeps referring to Abraham Lincoln, he did it for a reason. Abraham Lincoln is the only president that followed the constitutional directive to print money by Congress. when he created the greenbacks. And every president that tried to sustain that was assassinated, including himself, except for our current president. He's not talking about that. He's just going to do it. Okay. We already know what's in play. But you saw what happened to JFK. They didn't take him out because they didn't like him, everything he was saying. They took him out because he was about to make the Federal Reserve irrelevant. He was 10 days away from issuing a new currency from the Treasury.
Yep.
And they knew this. They couldn't have it. So,
Yep.
so if you look at all of that together, I think what's happening here, John, is that we're moving on a trajectory to issue currency again by the government, backed by the assets of the government. And those assets were secured under the Sovereign Wealth Fund that was initiated earlier this year. So you see this presidency taking step after step after step, bring the assets under an entity, then use that to monetize a new money creation. And it looks like we're well down the road with that.
Well said. And to those viewers that are just kind of where the rug has been pulled out from underneath you, thank goodness, and you're just finding folks like us, welcome to the real world, welcome to reality, welcome to your life. Check out Executive Order 11110 to support the statement that Will just made in terms of JFK's assassination and what was 10 days away from happening. I want to move into oil. Trump is about to open up, as I understand, the pipelines in Alaska. Oil just dipped below $60 a barrel. Where do you, and this is very important, people say, well, why is oil important? Well, because oil is used in practically everything and transporting goods and manufacturing of everything. Therefore, you got low oil, you got lower costs. So where do you see the price of oil heading in 2026? Any commentary on oil? Because while we're no longer pegged to, the petrodollar thing is gone, oil is still a very important commodity. What's your views on the oil situation?
It is an important commodity, and the president wants the price down, but he doesn't want the companies to go out of business. And he knows there's a threshold. That threshold 15 years ago was somewhere around $35 a barrel. Today it's higher. Okay. Probably 45. So he knows he can't go below that. But what he's doing by releasing all this energy is he's bringing the cost of everything down. Delivery comes down on goods. The manufacture of goods comes down. Everything we do is touched by electricity. We're having this conversation tonight using electricity. And so if you can bring the cost of that down and make it reasonable, that's going to be helpful going forward. We will eventually move away from petrochemicals. Technology will move us in a direction that moves us away from that eventually. But you don't take an entire world that's built on that and just snap your fingers and you're there in a day. So
correct.
What Trump is saying, there's plenty of it. Let's use it. It's available to us to bridge the gap until the technology can fully be implemented. And I champion what he's doing. But if you ask me to predict prices of oil, I think he's looking for that. We're at $60 now. I think he's looking for that target of around 45 as a sustainable long-term range. Now, most oil producers would probably want that to be 50 or 55 rather than be 45. But in the United States, particularly, there's an abundance of oil. And if you look at Alaska in particular, which they're about to open ANWR up there, where's he going to send that oil? There's now talk that they might do a pipeline through the Pacific in the Arctic and take it down and actually run a pipeline down along the ocean floor, but take it down to Japan, to Asia.
Wow.
That would be incredible. I can't imagine the cost of what that is, but that's an interesting thought. It's been tossed around by several people. Now, I think that's quite expensive to do something along those lines, but it doesn't mean they won't load up ships and just send ships over in the meantime, which is what we have in abundance.
Yeah.
So the bottom line is he wants oil to flow freely. He wants the price to be reasonable. He doesn't want it to be so low to go out of business. It's the same with the car manufacturers. He doesn't want them going out of business, but he wants the price down. He had a press conference today on that specific topic. The topic was this: he's opening the door for all vehicles, even these small little vehicles that you have in other countries that were not allowed in the United States, all gone. Any manufacturer can put out a vehicle, even if it's a little tiny two-seater, $10,000 car, Trump wants it. And so it was a big announcement that happened today, which builds upon the announcement he did yesterday, which is the Trump accounts for children. So that's a topic. Good stuff going on.
Yes. Lots of good stuff going on. And on that, feeding that notion, folks listening to us right now, think about the extraordinary time that we are alive here right now. To say it's a course correction for humanity is an understatement. And how blessed and how fortunate we are. And it's not an accident, and it's not a coincidence that we have Donald J. Trump at the helm right now. The mouthpiece, the spokesman, the brave, brilliant man that was chosen by the military to be in the seat he's in, 45-47. Thank you, Derek Johnson. You know, we're talking about commodities, Will. Pardon me, folks. Oil being oil being a very important commodity, silver being a really important commodity as well. Silver, as we announced last week, week before, has just entered, as I understand, the rare minerals list. We've talked about the backwardation process that unfolded certainly in the spotlight a couple of short months ago. Silver flirting now with $60 an ounce. I'm smiling because I have lots of silver, and I hope you folks do too. Silver is flirting with $60 an ounce, and gold working its way to 4,300. These are all-time highs. Where do you see these metals, say a year from now, 3 years from now, and why? And anything else you'd like to share about God's money, gold and silver?
Well, gold's going to continue to climb precipitously, but silver's another story. Silver's really out of balance, and Bill's probably going to elaborate on this a little bit later. But if you look at the ratio of the value of silver to gold, we're way out of norms. Go back 6,000 years and look at the average balances between gold and silver. Typically, 1 ounce of silver was a day's labor for a man. Okay, historically. Go back to 1700s, that's what it was. But today it would take 10 of those at least, right? So you're looking at things being way out. Typically, historically, it's run anywhere from 7 on the low end to maybe 20 on the high end as a ratio to gold, silver to gold in terms of ounces. When you look at it now, it's running what, 80-1?
Yes.
That's not sustainable. That's something's really off there. And when they made silver a strategic mineral, this was important because what it's letting everybody know is that silver is not as abundant as people think it is. Paper contracts are abundant, but if people start calling those paper contracts, your inventories are going to run out in a split second. And suddenly your values are going to jump. And then you could have a slingshot effect where silver launches itself almost near the price of gold before coming back into normal range. I don't like gyrations that are that big because they tend to be really disruptive. So I prefer more of a steady climb to get back into balance. I think perhaps maybe this current presidency would like to see that as well. But the reality is there's only so much silver mined per year, and we're already consuming more than we're mining. We're eating into the reserves and have been for 3 years in terms of people demanding inventory. So I don't know how much longer that can go on. Bill could probably actually talk a little bit about that a little bit later in the program.
Thank you. Yeah, and that's a great segue. We're going to bring on Bill Armour right now. If you wouldn't mind, Will. Hey, it's the Will and Bill hour. Stick around. Will, if you wouldn't mind parking yourself in the digital green room, as it were, and then I know you're pressed for time. You can join us for a bit to have a conversation about that and some other things with Bill Armour. So, to my producer, let's talk about Bill Armour. Bill Armour has built a unique career combining vocational ministry and expertise in the precious metals industry, equipping him to bridge faith-based perspectives with practical wisdom in stewardship and in business. Pardon me, folks. Bill is originally from Tucson, Arizona. Bill Armour spent 8 years serving in the U.S. Army Reserves. Thereafter, he went on to attend Azusa Pacific University, a Christian school in Southern California with a focus on Christian ministry and biblical studies. Bill is a precious metals expert and a director at Genesis Gold, my contact, my Patriot partner here at JMC Broadcasting. Welcome back to the Global Financial Reset. Every other week is Bill Armour. Hey, Bill, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Happy to be here. How are you?
Good. Were you able to tune into the first segment with Will?
I was absolutely. One thing I just want to say that kind of sticks out to me, because I get this from a lot of people when we'll talk about Trump, because they'll say, "How come he's not more explicit?" I'll say about certain things, and you guys touched on this, brilliantly. But that is, we've seen what happens to the people who have tried to be more explicit. Trump I really see his approach to a lot of this as that of an anaconda. And that is that he's not just going for the kill right immediately, is that he has slowly, it started, back in 2016, it's been going on for, close to 10 years now. But this has been a long, calculated, drawn out process here that you have to get everyone all at once. You have to get the system perfectly, because if you go too quickly, you go too soon, it's destined to fail. It's a house of cards. So Trump's sort of steadiness here, which is funny because it's sort of contrary to what a lot of people think about President Trump. They think he's brash and this and that, but he really is a master chess player in regards to the way that this has been approached. So I just kind of thought about that. But going on to more of the financial side of some of the things that you guys talked about, I would just say, 'cause at the very tail end, you touched on silver and gold and some of the differentials there. So it's actually, we're actually approaching here, projected out for the fifth consecutive year of a silver not creating as much as we're using there. So 5 straight years. And that's why this silver backwardation that we've talked about in the past has occurred, is because there is growing concern. You see this in the London Bullion Market Association, you see this in COMEX, that they're running dramatically low on the actual physical silver on hand, but the paper contracts are still flowing at tremendous rates. So as far as there's concern, they have to start looking around and saying, okay, we're not getting more silver. We're running out here. We don't want to give this silver away. And as we've touched on before in the past, that is when you start to see these dramatic moves, and that's where it slingshots, far, far, far beyond where it could even go. I always try, my goal always when I talk to people about this is to be very conservative in my approaches to what might happen. Now, so when I talk about, silver, true value being, 150, right in that range, that's because people come to me, 2 years down the road and silver's, $300. No one's ever going to say, "Bill, you told me it was going to be 150 and it's 300. How dare you?"
Correct. Yes,
so
understood.
In fact, you probably get a Christmas card in that case. So I've always tried to lean on that end. But Will was exactly right, that if we want to pull that time horizon back, thousands of years back, and we look at maybe the biblical perspective of where gold and silver ratio were, he's exactly right. That ratio gets much, much smaller. And then you add in the fact, and as you guys touched on again, that silver is a strategic mineral, and it's not one that we're not in this, that we can produce out of nowhere. We're not in this production sort of quandary because no one wants to produce silver. It's because it's not a metal that we find in the veins that we do with copper or gold, where it's all in one place. It tends to be a secondary metal in production, meaning that it's scattered around. So as you mine copper, as you mine gold, you also get maybe 20% silver in there, which is great. That boosts your bottom line, but you can't necessarily start a silver mine, because out of everything you mine, you're only going to get a relatively small amount. It's not concentrated. So it creates a real problem that, if a company wants to go mine silver today, now, they can't necessarily, because they're not going to get enough of that to really build out the entire mine. But again, that incentive there drives the, or not having that incentive drives the price up. So there's this back and forth, which is going to create at some point, and I think we're getting to, I would say within the next 12 to 24 months, there's going to be a massive spike in silver, a dramatic spike in silver that will then at that point, of course, that's when companies are saying, okay, well, silver is so valuable, we'll mine, dirt to get that little bit of silver we can get. And then, of course, eventually silver comes back down a little bit to compensate because there's not that supply dearth. But absolutely, that's on the horizon. It's an inevitability. If people are using, and I mean, it's one of the most used metals in the world now. If we're using that much silver, then all of a sudden here at some point there reaches a critical mass of we don't have it, we have to have it. Okay, so we'll pay whatever we have to get it. So those would be kind of my thoughts about some of the things you guys chatted on.
Great analysis. You talked about you forecasting perhaps silver a little bit down the line at 100 or 150, but it could hit 300 to 500. You'd get a Christmas card. I think you might start seeing statues of Bill Armour, water fountain statues erected on people's front lawns throughout this country. Never mind a Christmas card. But anyway, that's good information. Pardon me, folks. I could stay home and not do the shows and get better. So pardon the coughs. I'd rather do the shows. The show goes on. So let's bring Will Barney back on the screen. I've got a question for Will and Bill. Again, it's the Bill and Will Hour. Thanks, Will, for joining us. Say hello to each other, gentlemen. First time together on screen, I believe.
Good to see you, Bill.
Pleasure to meet you. Great name.
Thank you.
All right. We've introduced ourselves. We've bonded. And I have an important follow-up to listen to you gentlemen have a conversation about. Before we brought you on, Bill, Will had talked about that out of balance price ratio between gold to silver, 80 to 1, and gave us some historical precedents on that going back 6,000 years all the way till today. Let's pick up that conversation. What are the mechanics that will bring that back into line? What is the inline historical ratio that it should be? And when do you see this taking place? We'll start with Bill and then we'll go to Will, and you guys just have a conversation. I'll be a fly on the wall with our audience.
Yeah, absolutely. So it would the number you pick for the ratio between silver and gold really depends on your time scale. And what I mean by that is if we say, okay, what has it been historically over the last 50 years or the last 100 years, the last 200 years? If we take a time scale of literally thousands of years, that's where you can start to see, or even several hundred years, we can start to see that come down to the 10 to 1 type range. If we look at a smaller time scale, we can see like 30, 35 to 1. So it really depends on there. But the answer I would give of when it comes back to that is that there is a rubber band effect that does occur, and this is pretty natural with silver, wherein that ratio gets stretched and stretched and stretched, and then at some point, what do rubber bands do, right? They break and they snap back. So when that occurs, I think that we're at the precipice here, and that's evidenced by what we saw just 90 days or 60 days ago with the backwardation and that continued pressure that we're seeing on the paper silver markets. There is, it's 100 to 1 or beyond, and that's before we get into derivatives, but 100 to 1 in terms of paper ounces to actual physical ounces that we have accounted for. So everyone is counting on the ability to get and have silver, and all it takes is really just a breakdown of that trust for the prices to skyrocket up, and that's where you get this almost this bidding war. Because as long as people can keep others convinced that we do have enough, trust me, that's where we live in this sort of make-believe paradise. But the second that facade gets broken, that's where you see things climb up, and that's where you see them even overshoot probably where they would rationally be valued, because again, there's now a bidding war that's going to occur.
I think it's interesting what you had to say there, Bill, because as we look over the last 24 months, we've seen some very interesting things happen with gold and silver both. Silver's up over 100% in the last 12 months. Okay. And it's looking like it's going to do that again and more in the next 12. Look back at the last 100 years. When has that occurred? It hasn't. Not at that rate in 1 year. We've had a spike that's unlike anything that we've seen. Gold being at 4,300, that's unbelievable, right? So what's happening here? What's happening here is the levers of control that were put in place by the Federal Reserve to cap the price of the metals is being released. And they're doing it slowly, because if they did it, if you just suddenly just pull that off, the snap effect's going to be even worse than what you want. You need it to rise. They need these values of the metals to go up, because the new currency is going to be backed by them, and you need that value to be up there in order to do that. But as we look at silver being way out of ratio to gold, the Federal Reserve wanted the metals controlled, very low, very controlled, because
Yes.
an abundance of the metals put them out of business overnight. It literally would kill them, because they don't sit on enough reserves that they could possibly play that game. They got out of that a long time ago. So as we look at that and what's coming, it's going to be fascinating as we watch the next 12 months, because I honestly think that silver, if it was in a more normal range, should be in that $350 to $400 range, a day's labor for a man. Okay.
Yeah.
Look at it historically. That's always what it's been. 1 ounce of silver paid a guy for a day. So if you look at it, we're way off of that number. So it's got at least 10x to go. So I think silver
Yeah,
could
and I would
move
even
faster than gold because of that.
Yeah, and I would even add that again, looking back, thousands of years, silver didn't have the industrial use that it does now. So its value there should be tremendously higher than it was relative to where it was, several hundred years ago, 1,000 years ago. So even that a day's labor would not constitute a fair value for silver, given the relevance it has. And just going back, as you talked there, it just made me think of something that happened earlier this week, and that is that across the pond there in Europe, because they're dealing with some of the same things that we are. The ECB, the European Central Bank, had to respond because Italy's prime minister came out and said, "Hey, all that gold that you guys have, which is a ton relative to all the gold in the world, but it's a good amount." And they said, that's ours, and we actually want that. We want that. It's our country, and if perhaps we want to pay some debt back or do whatever, we want that. And so they made a statement, and the ECB had to come back. I'm going to read this for you guys. I just pulled it up. It says, in the last couple of weeks, it says, we're carrying out the task of holding and managing gold reserves. Neither the ECB nor a national central bank, including the Bank of Italy, nor any member of their decision-making body shall seek or take instruction from any member or member state. That's the ECB there. That's them telling them, this is our gold. You can't have it, which is crazy, because that's not the ECB's gold. That is actually Italy's gold reserves. And they were saying, hey, we might want to use these at some point. But you're right, they don't have it. And if all of a sudden, they have very, very tiny amount relative. But the tiny amount they do have, a little bit of the facade that they've got people in, you've got this comment coming out of Italy saying, hey, we might want some of that. And it threw the whole world. They said, this could put the entire system into jeopardy. We're talking about, market crashes. And so they tried to create this fear bomb. And unfortunately, Italy has backed down a little bit, which I think speaks to the fact that we're still in the middle of this war. It's like, it really is global in a sense, beyond just us. But I think that we're seeing this across the world, that people are waking up to something that they've ignored and they've been sort of slaves to for so long.
They're following a bit of the same strategy that Trump's been following. He'll throw out something provocative, something really out there, and everybody goes crazy for 2 weeks about it. And then they all get it out of their system, they calm down. And then a few weeks later, he actually does the thing. But by this point, they've already spent their energy screaming about it, so they just let it happen. And the same thing could be going on here with Italy. They threw it out there. It's made all the news. Let that thing die down. Then they may come in later and say, give it up, right? We need to have it. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. One of the things that's interesting to me, for 10 years ago, silver was sitting at somewhere around 30 to 50 to 1 ounce in terms of paper to an ounce of silver. Now it's way beyond 100. Like, these guys didn't even slow down with the theft. It's like unbelievable. So I don't know what's going to happen when they suddenly start calling those contracts and saying, deliver me the metal. I think that could really, as you said, Bill, I think it could really spike it dramatically.
Yeah, and one thing I'll even add there is the way that the silver markets work, particularly, is that really it's built on this constant lending. So you have, someone has silver, then it gets lent, then they have that silver and they lend it, and that really functionally that's what's happening is people are passing off those contracts. That's kind of the paper side of it. So and they charge some sort of generally it's in a normal market it's a nominal fee, very very small, much less to borrow that than even you would take on a bank note or a loan. We're talking sub 1%, half a percent, a quarter of a percent. Now all of a sudden, if those premiums on those loans go up because they want their silver, because the guy in front of them wants their silver back, so they have to get it back. So though those premiums run up, and because they are so over leveraged with paper silver that they don't actually have and they can't actually get if they have to, the other side of it is that they're not able to get that. That's where you see a lot of companies who are, banks, et cetera, large financial institutions that have been dabbling in this. And functionally, that's why they want to keep the price of silver down. Because again, the functional system that's occurring here is that if the price of silver goes up and essentially it's almost like a margin call and they want their silver, then the price shoots up. They're not able to provide it. The premiums on the loans go up. And then all of a sudden here, it's sort of a recipe for disaster. It is a vicious cycle. And so you could see major cornerstone financial institutions that are crippled for this because they have been playing this false game for so long and being a participant in it. But I would say that that's sort of just desserts for this kind of financial malfeasance.
It would look like a Lehman Brothers going out again.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Thanks,
Stearns
gentlemen.
and all the rest.
Great information. I hope raise your hand to the three of us on the screen. Raise your hand if you own some silver. Hello. All right. Rhetorical question. What comes to mind is Ron Paul. He was the lone wolf congressman for a couple of decades, saying everything these gentlemen just said. Who's he saying it to? Ben Bernanke, Helicopter Ben, to Alan Greenspan, trying to expose the fraud of the Fed and shine a light on gold, to shine a light on their corruption by allowing the handcuffs off of gold and silver. I'm sure Ron Paul is quite pleased with what he sees taking place today. And of course, Q, I believe, certainly in the Q world, gold will bring down the Fed or expose the Fed. I want to shift gears a little bit. It's sort of in the same general discussion, but we're going to move it over to the dollar here. I'll begin with Bill and then we'll go to Will. Explain simple, keep it simple, Sam, step by step, kind of brief, because I want to run the Juan O'Savin clip and have you guys weigh in on that. But let's begin with Bill. Explain to the best of your knowledge how you see this pathway from where we are now, in a dollar that's fighting to maintain its position on the index with all the attacks it's getting, the Federal Reserve dollar, that debt, money as debt, that thought dollar. So explain to the best of your knowledge how we go from that in the journey, step by step, with its ultimate destination, as I understand it, being in the stable coin in the QFS. Here we are today with a Federal Reserve funny money debt that's getting hammered and that the world doesn't want to use anymore, by and large, and where we're heading. What are the sequential steps in your crystal ball, Bill, that you see taking place to get from where we are to where we need to be? Connect the dots 101, simple for me and simple for our audience, and then we'll go to Will.
Yeah, absolutely. And so broadly speaking, and obviously Will can add some color to this and his insight, but broadly speaking, the first step, and this is one of a couple that's been going on for a long time, and that is this is really again what I think Trump has been doing, is to expose some of this, right? People have to first understand, or at least have some gauge of what is going on. So we have to expose and delegitimize the debt slavery that has existed for so long now. So I think that's the first step there. That's pointing out, that's allowing some of this to come to light. And I think that's one of the major things that people like yourself are educating people on. They're coming to learn. Again, we still have a long way to go in terms of people understanding that, but think about how different things are today versus 10 years ago, where no one was really talking about, almost no one was talking about this, versus
Yes.
today it's becoming a thing. We're having these conversations And I think that's one of the key parts as far as initially. The next thing that's going on simultaneously there is the infrastructure is being built out, right? So that's quantum computing. That's putting together a rail system that will be able to carry and transition here, because we need the infrastructure in place, contrary to sort of a CBDC type setup where the goal is to wreck everything into a system we don't understand and that other people have control over, that do not have our best interests at heart. This has to be set up and put together in a way where we have transparency and these other massive. So I think that technology even being developed has been a big piece, and is something that is still going on and developed out. That's the infrastructure. That's quantum secure ledgers. That's instant settlement. That's tokenization here, asset-backed stablecoin. So that infrastructure is sort of created. And then as we move forward from there, so we've got people are somewhat aware of it. The infrastructure is then in place, and then this is where we get into maybe exactly how different people approach this. Who knows? We'll see. But my understanding is that we will generally see either we'll see without the Federal Reserve, as we limit them, without them being able to sort of continue to pass out this debt slavery, things will naturally fall over a little bit. And then we can get in from there, obviously, into the major ways that they've taken away from, they've instilled that debt. So we forgive that debt. We have like a debt jubilee system. And then from there, we move from all of the finances that here were legitimate, right? That's where they get moved into the QFS system. That's kind of a NESARA type setup there. And from there, so we've got that catalyst that kind of initiates there. And then at that point, legacy, debt-based debt is erased, and legitimate actual income there is transferred into the new system. And that's obviously, again, token-based. That's going to be asset-backed, gold-backed is my belief on that. So from there, you get to a wallet. That wallet, again, is not going to be something that is controlled by a bank. That is going to be individual to you. And I think that from over a long period of time, the architecture of that wallet system is probably going to be the key. But in the meantime, I think, and I think Will had mentioned this earlier, that people that really aren't feel comfortable with that or whatnot, that's okay. They still stick with checks and other different things. But the system, that infrastructure has been set up, and again, to create that transparency and to limit and to kill any sort of financial abuse that would occur in the future.
Thanks, Bill. Will, do you care to weigh in on that?
Great points there, Bill. It's interesting as we look at what the transition might look like from a Federal Reserve central bank system, and the whole world's undergoing this, it's not just our country, into the country itself issuing the money directly from the Treasury. Completely different circumstance. I don't think the Fed just suddenly just dies one day, we flip a switch and it's over, because I think the people are going to have to see a little bit the dichotomy.
Right.
Asset-backed, fiat paper, nothing, right? To see it in front of them and to make a conscious choice. You and I don't need that. We're all awake, right, on this conversation probably. But there's some that are just waking up. They're just starting to learn these things and figure it out.
Most.
They still need to see this play out in front of them. And we see this happening in the media right now. We're now at a time where censorship is being controlled. It's not running crazy, at least not in this country anymore. YouTube, just over the last 60 days, has restored a whole bunch of Patriot accounts that were shut down before. Suddenly they're back up. Why is that? Because we're going to now start be able to see truth and lies in front of us right at the same time. So I think they're going to do this for the people because they want everybody to choose the better part. Okay. So I think that as we look at transition wise, we're going to see the pieces be put into place, which we're already halfway there or more. And there's a few more steps to go. We still need the Digital Asset Clarification Act, right? Sitting in the Senate, passed by the House last July. I don't know what's taking so long. But as soon as the only reason they're holding off on that is just because they're not quite ready. There's a timing to all of this if people haven't figured it out. Because the moment that goes, the blockchain is ready. Okay. and it changes the entire dynamics. And that way you don't have exchanges that are doing Wild West stuff in the back room, crypto, because they got their keys and all this crazy stuff. They're going to suddenly be audited just like bank, and maybe as often as every month in the beginning. So there's going to be some interesting things that take place there when it comes to the exchanges when those bills go into effect, because then you have law. Now, with that, with a new financial system, and people can see fiat backed by nothing, and then you introduce a currency backed by real stuff, it's going to be easy to see where this lies. And the people will actually scream about the fraud of it all. And so I don't think it's going to be like, oh my gosh, this Jubilee, I never saw it coming. I think the people will actually demand it because they'll actually see that it was been fraud upon them their whole lives.
Absolutely. Great segment, each of you. I want to direct our audience at the conclusion of this broadcast, visit wealthcoachuniversity.com. I've built a small but very valuable library of videos from people like Bill Still, the Money Masters, Money as Debt, work from very important, high quality individuals that will explain this for those that are just kind of stumbling into this, the transitions and realizing what we've actually been operating under all these decades. Those documentaries are there for you at wealthcoachuniversity.com. Again, at the conclusion of this show, those that need some further education, they're really, really well done videos for you. Also, I want to ask you this question, and then we're going to run the Juan O'Savin clip and then come to the conclusion of our broadcast. But again, keep it simple, Sam question. With what we've been listening to, the transition of the economy, of the currency, of the banking, et cetera, of the currencies. With that in mind, and I phrased the question from three standpoints: individual, corporations, entities of that type, not-for-profit or for-profit corporations, and governments. Those three entities, individuals, corps, and governments. As we progress, because it's a process, as we know, fast forward 3 years, let's say, just to kind of put us in the zone for this question. 3 years from now, as we move into this quantum financial stablecoin system, replacing SWIFT and banking as we know it and so forth, and the currency itself, as we've been discussing. When we get there, let's say 3 years from now, will individuals, corporations, and governments have any use for banking as we know it? A brick and mortar bank, or even the online capabilities of dealing in banking, your checking and your savings and so forth and so on. Does that still exist at all? And if so, to what degree within your crystal ball do you think individuals, corporations, and governments will be functioning in the restructure of banking versus the new system? Does that question make sense? We'll start with Will, and then we'll go to Bill Armour.
I actually think as you look at a long-term look at where's banking, that if you go out 5 years, 10 years, I think you're going to see an 80% reduction in banks. They're not going to be able to survive when the people realize their digital wallet can receive and make payments just like a checking account. They have their checking account on their phone. Why do I need to go to my bank? Why do I need to deal with their banker hours and banker holidays? I've got a device that works 24/7. It's going to be obvious to people when that happens. So I think that there's going to be a migration that occurs. I also think, and speaking from experience about crypto, if you don't understand it, there's a little bit of technicality that goes on in the back end. I think we're going to see new software, new interfaces that on the front are simple and basic, easy for people to grasp, yet it takes care of all the technicality on the back for you. And I think as we get new wallets that have that functionality, that's when mass adoption really come into play. in terms of using the new blockchain system. And it'll be as simple as, and biometric plays a part in this. I don't think we can have this conversation without discussing that. If you have real security, it means that no one can use your account except you, and that your device has to biometrically understand it's you. It also means that if there are debit cards being issued against that account, which I believe there will be some at the beginning, you're not going to have millions and millions of stores, grocery stores, everything switch over point of sale to suddenly be blockchain. That takes a number of years, actually, by the time you switch everybody over. So you'll still have to have some debit cards. But let's say that the Treasury sets up for you a digital account that is blockchain, and then they give you a card for that. Don't be surprised if that card is biometric, meaning no one except you can actually use it. You could leave it on a table at the mall and people just leave it there because it's useless to them. Because only the person that fits the biometric can use it. And so there's a lot of good things I think that are coming with this technology. They're going to make it easier for people to understand. Banks, the only way they survive is that do they provide a product or service that you need? So if it isn't wealth management or a vault to hold your metals or something like this that's giving you a service, if they're trying to survive on checking accounts, they're going to go bust. It's just going to go away. So they're going to have to really get ahead of that if they expect to have a future.
Great analysis. Bill, if you care to weigh in briefly, we're going to move on to another subject, but please do weigh in.
Yeah, I would agree entirely. I think that it's sort of the blockbuster versus streaming. It will become redundant,
Good
right?
analogy.
Yeah, but of course, there's still like capital management and things of that nature. But frankly, even today, a lot of that is done by you. You don't have to have that done by a bank. There's other places that do a better job of that. So I think that it will become. I mean, the way that we understand and we talk about banks today is not how we will talk about, that will be kind of a dinosaur. Yeah, I would agree with that.
Thanks. I want to make an announcement to the audience. You know, I work here in real time. People see me jotting notes down. There's an attorney. He's from the United States. He's a U.S. citizen. He's also a Thai citizen. He's been here about 20 years. I've worked with him, as a foreigner living abroad. There are various needs for immigration and other things that one would need his services. His name is Benjamin Hart. I ran a pre-recorded Zoom with him some weeks back. I'm going to be bringing him on live, and I'd like to bring him on live in 2 weeks. I know Bill Armour's back in 2 weeks. Hopefully, Will Barney can join us in 2 more weeks on this broadcast. I'm going to bring Benjamin Hart live from Bangkok on the broadcast to talk about the 86 million, because what spawned this is Will's commentary about biometrics and the role that's going to be playing. In Vietnam, 86 million accounts were just froze, cut off, because they refused biometric banking. We have here in the country I reside in, Thailand, and Thailand's a beautiful place. 3 million bank accounts have followed suit for the same reasons as in Vietnam. Are we looking at a trend? Obviously, there's pros and cons to all of this, and we'll bring the attorney in and put him right in between Bill and Will, and sort of open up a can of worms here. David Icke, for example, would not be a fan of biometric banking. For those that follow and understand,
Nobody wants. There's a difference between centralized biometric and decentralized. Blockchain is decentralized. What this means is that the device itself holds your biometrics, but nobody else has it. Okay? And that's the difference with what this is, because we've lived in such a surveillance world. Google, Facebook, all this stuff. Everything's constantly surveilling people. But when you get to the point where, it's your phone, your device is the only thing that holds your biometrics, and therefore you need to have this in order to do your transaction. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about that data being held anywhere else except on the local device specific to you. I hope that helps.
Thanks for bringing that up as we close out that discussion right now. And that's the reason I want to bring in the attorney and both of you gentlemen to have a roundtable discussion on it to extrapolate all those views and great information you just provided so we gain a better understanding. I've got one more thing to tackle. Then we're going to bring on the Wano Savin's brief segment. Very, very important. Unbelievable. In fact, the sizzle reels that you run from the Restream, they sizzle reeled Juan and I on this subject, and it got to the best of our knowledge is probably more over 800,000 views because it is that unbelievable. So we're going to run that little clip in just a moment. But before we do, we'd be remiss if we did not discuss. We've been discussing a lot of important things, all positive changes that are coming for this world. The dawning of the golden age, in my opinion, officially begins July 4th, 2026, and we're all the precursors are well in motion today. That brings me to the debt. The U.S. corporation is defunct. We know that now. We've officially restored our constitutional republic, and we're catching up on all the pieces of that right now. So we talked earlier about the 38 trillion federal debt, as I alluded to the Elon Musk quote. Okay, so having said that, we have the Saint Germain Trust, what I understand, 160 trillion. We have the trading of our birth certificate and the value of us and all the money they fraudulently made on our birth and our existence. Never mind all the soon to be revealed fraudulent contracts we've all engaged in, whether they be credit cards, loans, mortgages, cars, whatever. I mean, it's that sweeping. This stuff's going to get picked up along the way too. And by the way, to everyone listening, nothing can stop what's coming. That's why I want to bring the attorney on. And none of us are opposing each other here. We're all just trying to get down to the bottom of what is going on. And so it's going to be a wonderful episode. But what I'm getting at is nothing can stop what's coming, folks. So we better understand it and go along for the ride. So having said that, the 160 trillion. There's no one talking about the Leo Wanta money from way back when, which I understand has got a T in front of it as well, back in the Reagan days. You've got all of the 450, 650 plane loads, whatever the number is, of pallets of gold that was rescued and taken out of the Vatican tunnel some years back. And then you've got, the whole noise of Fort Knox and, what's going on there. So what I'm getting at is there's all this wealth that is sitting there, and the sovereign wealth fund that Will spoke about before, and other mechanisms and ways that'll get funded to right all the centuries of wrong. Okay, so having laid that groundwork, I think there's a question in there somewhere. The question is, any feedback, just general feedback. We'll start with Bill, we'll go to Will, and then we'll run the clip from Juan. What's your feedback on all of that wealth and what we see coming out from the administration, President Trump, Dan Scavino, etc., about it coming back to us? It's a slow rollout, $2,000 checks to a lot of people coming in July. Okay, hey, no one's going to not cash the check. We'll take the money. To me, it's the tip of the iceberg. I had retired Lieutenant Colonel Tom Lennox, God bless this gentleman for his incredible decades of service in military, in leadership, in combat, at the Pentagon, as well as the Department of Defense comptroller at one point. We had him on this broadcast many weeks back, where he spoke about formulas, etc., that are already in place for wealth that's coming back to every legal citizen in the United States and perhaps people all over the world. There's a lot of stuff, and what I'm summarizing that as, there's a ton of money sitting there, folks, that belongs to we the people of America and we the people of the world. What's your view about the reality of that, Bill, and then Will, of that money coming back to us far exceeding a $2,000 check in July?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, first off, it always, it makes you mad, it makes you upset that because effectively that didn't come out of thin air, right? That is effective. I always think about money as really just it's a way to almost like materialize your time, effort, work, really. So that is all of the sort of stored up effort and labor and work that has been stolen from people over a tremendous amount of time that exists there. So what that is we're getting back all of this time, et cetera, that's been stolen away from people. And it makes me think that the thing comes to mind is just, I'll talk to young people and they'll talk about how, it's tough out there, effectively. It's hard to get a home. It's hard, all of these different things. And what they don't understand is that is going to change dramatically, that the system that they are participating in right now does make it impossible for them. It is designed to steal from them. The whole you'll own nothing and be happy. This system was designed for them to be a rat in a maze, stuck on a treadmill, and that's going to change. And that is what we have to look forward to, is that for once your labor will actually be fairly valued. You're not having a tremendous amount of that stolen from you. And so we can think back to what that will change and sort of the tremendous change in the American lifestyle that will bring.
Well said. Will,
Excellent
get a
point, Bill.
coattail on that?
Well, it's interesting as you look at the wealth that's out there. What people don't understand is that when Trump issued Executive Order 18 regarding the children, crimes against humanity, basically, if you've been caught, if we have the evidence against you of this, we can confiscate your funds.
That's right.
You had members of the elite families. I don't call them elite, but it's what they called themselves. Like the Rothschilds, sitting on accounts with over 600 T in them. That's enough to pay off the debt of every country on the planet. So if you've confiscated this and you use their own currency to pay them off, which is, I think, a fitting way to do it, you don't have to ask anything of the people. You can have a jubilee, right? Yeah. You talked about the St. Germain Trust. 160. I've seen off-ledger accounts that are bigger than 180 T in U.S. banks. Amazing.
Wow.
And so there's a lot of wealth that's out there. The problem hasn't been, is there resources to stop poverty, all the problems? It's just been, is there anybody willing to do it? And those that have been shot and killed. When Kennedy struck that deal with President Sukarno of Indonesia to try to release this new currency and end the Federal Reserve, their plan was to end poverty completely on the whole planet. They had it all laid out. And Sukarno could do this because he had vast resources. He was the descendant of Solomon, and he had a portion of that wealth, which is why he had the resources to back it. So there's interesting things that's going on here. What people are about to understand as we turn the tide here is that there's always been more than enough. And we're going to be entering a time when there's no more taxation. There will be some taxes your government has to run, but it's going to be a consumption tax. You're going to pay it when you buy something, a sales tax, okay? And you have that choice to buy something or not buy something.
That's right.
So you can choose whether you're taxed or not taxed, right? By having a consumption tax. So it's a very fair system, and it's a way that the government can still run. But the incredible thing is if you look at, and the president made this comment regarding Intel. He struck a deal with Intel for 10% of Intel to go to America. And where those funds go, it goes to the Sovereign Wealth Fund. And who are the beneficiaries? Well, it's all the citizens. And he talked about that deal when he struck it was $9 billion. From the time they struck that deal until today, they've earned $20 billion. There's no reason that every country couldn't be wealth beyond your imagination. What he did yesterday with the Trump accounts for children in the United States.
Yes.
Any child born in 25, 26, 27, and 28. So the years of this presidency are going to get $1,000 when they're born into that account. And then, of course, it can be contributed to by family and others. But in addition to that, you have benefactors, such as the Dell family, who stepped up and said, we're going to provide money for 25 million children. And we're not just going to go for the babies. If they're under 10 years old, we'll give it to them. That's incredible because that's investing in the future, not with debt. That's assets that turn into a vast quantity, and it's all going to be managed by the Treasury, and it's invested in the S&P 500. It's going to be the average gains that are done there. The Treasury's handling the whole thing. I thought it was brilliant. Dell probably thought it was brilliant because the biggest problem with being a philanthropist and having money is the cost that it takes you to actually disperse that money. You have to set up all these systems and you have to make sure those people aren't stealing it so that it's getting to the actual recipients. Well, the government did it all for him. So they just handed him a perfect system and it was free. Great. So he's putting in 6.25 billion. So that is going to become something incredible. And 30 years from now, every one of these kids are going to remember Trump accounts. He's just, I don't know how his name got put on it, but they're going to be thanking him for a long time. So it's
Trump likes to put his name on things.
There. Just to sum up your answer to John, it's just that there's more wealth on this planet than anybody understands, and there's no reason we can't all do really, really well.
Yeah. Great content, gentlemen. This is an extraordinary broadcast. I sure as hell hope that everyone watching this live right now on the 5 platforms we're on, and then when it gets cut and distributed officially to over a dozen platforms, share the heck out of this show. It'll calm the nerves of the American people. Hang on, America. Hang on, world. Help is on the way. God didn't intend for us to live in a world of scarcity. He intended us to live in a world of abundance, and the hammer of justice has heard each of our calls, and we are alive to be a part of this. Hang on. Now, of course, I'll get some people that say, hang on, I'm tired of this. I want the arrest. I'm waiting for the... Hey, what's your alternative? Jump off the bridge? Hang on. It's coming. Continue to get educated. Stay grounded. Surround yourself with like-minded people who understand the times in which we live and expand those circles. We're almost there, folks. I want to also mention Dell, Zuckerberg, and Bill Gates. Now, I'm not saying this is the case with Dell, but I am saying it's the case with Gates and Zuckerberg. You alluded to earlier, Will, Executive Order 13818, those caught with sex trafficking and other horrific crimes against humanity and so forth. The executive order can be read by anyone. Just go look it up. They can seize legally through that executive order the assets of such individuals and organizations. I think that's exactly what's happened with Bill Gates, which is why he's coming out right now and saying, oh, I made a mistake on climate change. Okay, why Zuckerberg acquiesced to the president at that dinner at the White House? We own these people right now. And I'm wondering, it's just a wondering.
Absolutely.
I haven't had time to research. If that's what's happening with Mr. Dell at the same time, I don't care. Put the money where it belongs. I'm very happy for that. I want to bring on that one segment. Yes, go ahead. Don't be surprised about Dell.
I said, don't be surprised when you hear later that some of these individuals needed to play the game. If they're allowed to keep their reputation intact and make great contributions, it means they gave up all the goods and they spilled the beans on everything. That's what that means.
Absolutely. That's exactly right. I'm going to run this clip from Juan O'Savin. Now, to set the stage, I recorded this a week or so ago. It was when Juan contacted me and all the other folks in new broadcasting for the call for Tina Peters to be free. And there's been some progress made on that. I hope you're following Juan O'Savin as he goes through the media circuit on that. Tina Peters and Reimer Fulmick and Pastor Artur Pawlowski and many others need to be free. And so thank Juan for his tireless efforts on that. But in that episode, we split it up. We spoke of Tina Peters for 25 minutes. And then since I had one, it's a Zoomed recording. I wanted to get into the bond collapse that's already begun, the real estate collapse that has already begun. And in that segment, I'm going to pull out 3.5 minutes for you right now to say something that, again, has almost 1 million views. Let's run this clip to our producer and have our panel weigh in on it.
I've tracked personally 17,000 pallets of 100 million each that I know where they're at. They physically exist. I've had people with eyes on in the room verifying. 17,000 pallets with $100 million in U.S. cash on each pallet.
Wow.
Beyond that, there's 5,000 pallets that I'm fairly comfortable exist, but we haven't had anybody in the room actually to see those particular pallets. Others that I'm dealing with say that the total number of pallets that they have been able to determine exist at this point in time of printed American dollars from somewhere, that the total number of those pallets is 100,000 pallets with $100 million each on them in various locations around the world. What they're preparing to do, or were preparing to do, within some globalista construct, was to collapse the Federal Reserve dollar and with it the American economy, and then to introduce their globalista currencies in their place, and that we'd be forced to go there with, digital instruments, digital banking, etc., including crypto. What a lot of people think is about to come within a QFS environment, you've got a lot of people that don't really understand the financial and banking community that are putting terms into play that have nothing to do with what's about to happen. The easiest, most direct way for the time being, the scripture, a wise man sees trouble and gets out of the way. While this is being stabilized, while this situation is being worked through, and let me just add this one little thing, gold and silver in a good, healthy business environment are horrible investments as a general rule.
Mm-hmm.
They're an investment that when the music stops, you want a solid place to sit so that when the music starts again, you're ready to dive right back in and be part of whatever's happening with the manufacturing, the business, the creation.
Thank you, Juan Savin, who, by the way, has been serving this nation mostly clandestinely since the time of Ronald Reagan. He told me this off air many years ago when I met Juan, and now, as of recent, he's said it on air so I can report it. Juan O'Savin was one of the individuals under the Reagan administration that helped collapse the Russian ruble, which led to the collapse of the Soviet Union. Hats off to Juan O'Savin. Bill, kind of brief on this if we can. I want to wind the show down in a minute, but we have important closing comments here. What's your take on these pallets? All this money. Any feedback? We'll go with Bill, and then we'll hit Will up for that.
Yeah, I would say first off that, obviously it's evidence of financial warfare, but it also speaks to the general sense, and I like that he alluded to, a wise man goes to safety, because that's really where we're at right now, is that I tend to think that the death knell, you back a dog into a corner and they bite. And I think that is ultimately where we find ourselves. And that's why I'm so pro gold and silver right now, is because no one really knows what the last ditch efforts look like and how nasty that gets. Obviously I believe we win on the end of this, but what that looks like in the interim could get very, very ugly. And I don't think it makes really logical sense for any person to take that risk when it's so unnecessary. We're so close to the finish line, and to put people's, themselves in harm's way that close to the edge just seems really pointless. So that's kind of my thought. I would just say, obviously, with the money there, this is a tried and true tactic in terms of crashing an economy. And he's right; these do exist.
Thanks, Bill. Will, brief comment. We've got no audio. Will, we don't hear you.
Do you hear me now?
We got
okay,
you, sir.
great.
Go ahead.
So it's interesting what's occurring here with these pallets of cash. This isn't the first time pallets have been used. During the Obama administration, Obama made sure some plates were shipped over to Europe so that they could print pallet loads, put on trucks, and they were shipping it into Ukraine to pay the freedom fighters, as they called them, over there to do that. That, of course, was found out and stopped. But there's been numerous times there's been plates put out there where these money can be printed uncontrolled. So there's a lot of it out there. What we have is we have a president that has signed an executive order that there will be no CBDC. And now you
Yes.
have Congress moving to actually codify that into law. So I don't see that happening here in the country. It doesn't mean it couldn't be tried in other countries. But in the United States, I don't see them succeeding with that. It doesn't mean that
Yep.
there won't be a last ditch effort, you know, the dying animal of the cabal trying to somehow gain control out of Congress. I don't think it's going to happen. They're going to fail miserably. So we stand at the precipice of a very good place. When it comes to gold and silver, historically, metals are an absolutely horrible earner. They just don't perform very well in terms of earning capacity, but they're an incredible safety net with reserve wealth. And Juan is correct what he's saying about that. However, those that have been sitting on silver, well, you just had 100% year. So now you've just had an unbelievable run, okay, for the last. So there are small times in history when that's proven wrong. But I think we
Thank
live at
you.
a time that's absolutely historical, a time when we all take necessary steps to secure ourselves, secure our families. Don't do this out of fear. You're going to go wrong if you do that. You need to take calculated decisions made from information that you get from programs like this to set yourself up and your family in a place where you feel is a place of safety and security to launch in good shape.
Thank you very much, Will Barney. Where is the best place to people to follow you and your work? And give us an update on your developmental website and some of the things you're doing.
You can go to Enoch, ENOCHGS. It's for Enoch Global Services, EnochGS.com. And there is a new website that's up there now. So, it is, I believe that is functioning now. So you can go there. There's also links to X.com, to Truth Social. There's also you have Rumble and YouTube and other places where you can find us. That's all there on the website.
Thank you. And hopefully you can connect up with our producer, Sandy, post-show here and see if you can join us, not next week, but the following week. I'd like to put together the panel with you, Bill, and the attorney. Thank you very much, Will Barney, for being here. I want to make a quick announcement, and don't go anywhere. We're going to close out with something, an action item that is extremely important because you got all this great information without action. It's just entertainment. So what I'd like to say before we get into that with Bill Armour and then wrap up our broadcast, for those, attention, those that do not have any assets to protect, you're trying to make ends meet, trying to figure out how to buy lunch today, which is a lion's share of America and people around the world. As Bill Armour said before, not your fault, by and large, by design. It's a miracle some of us escaped that to the extent we may have. Okay? Your time is coming. Our time is coming. Just hang in there, and you'll be calling 1-800-200-4653 before you know it and catching the final ride of gold and silver in the short few years to come down the road. So just hang in there. It's coming. Those with assets to protect. If this show wasn't enough for you to move you to action, you want some more, visit wealthcoachuniversity.com, 10 free educational modules. Go to jmcbroadcasting.com homepage or wealthcoachuniversity.com homepage. Click on the free masterclass that I did. It's up there for you. And that should motivate you with all the education you need, if this show hasn't already done it, to those with assets to protect, to GOOTS. Get out of the system. GOOTS. Get out of the system. I laid it all out on the wealthcoachuniversity.com. It's all there for free. Those that need help. Those that want some extra help, because there's 4 buckets in GOOTS. 4 buckets. Keep it simple, Sam. However, each bucket could raise 400 questions that you may have that you might not want to navigate through on your own, that economic minefield. I'm available for you. Can do only 8 appointments a month. That you have to schedule and secure me for 8 for your appointment live on Zoom, 2-box Zoom, where I can walk you through it. Remember, I'm a recovering financial advisor. I had 6 offices in 3 states. I did that for over a dozen years. Know what goes on the other side of the fence. I can sort of be the whistleblower for you and analyze how you can get out of where you are to where you need to be without any scars. And the key component, the key component, but one of the steps in the Goots model is for sure physical, tangible bullion, gold and silver. That's where my resource, Bill Armour, comes in. 1-800-200-4653. So, Bill, why don't you talk with us about those that, and you can also visit, you see on the screen under my name, JMC. I think I can't see it. I've got something blocking the screen. JMC, there it is, jmcgenesismetals.com. And under Bill's name, you have 1-800-200-4653. I encourage you to go to jmcgenesismetals.com and listen to what the president has to say about all this. It's there for you, as well as my commentary summarizing everything. It is there for you, and a lot of information about gold and silver and Genesis Metals. That'll fast track you to Bill Armour, or just give him a call direct, 1-800-200-4653. When people reach out to you, Bill, well, from clicking on the links I have everywhere, or from jmcgenesismetals.com, or by calling you direct, what is the experience they will have? Transactional versus consultative. Let's begin there.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first step is, it's almost like you walk into a doctor's office. The first step is we've got to diagnose, what the heck's going on here. And what I mean by that is, how are you set up? How can this become a reality for you? How do we get you away from kind of the danger zone, so to speak? And which is very, very different from if any of these listeners have ever called another gold company. A lot of them, frankly, are going to treat them like you're on a used car lot, and they're going to jam them up and say, "Hey, you need to get this done today. You need to do this, that, and the other thing." And it's really, you're jarred by that experience. I have so many people that I talk to, and we get to the end of the conversation. They say, I've called 2 other gold companies, and this is nothing like anything I've ever experienced. And I think it's a testament to really the approach that we have here, that I have with this. And that is that, I mean, obviously it's a job, but frankly, this is doing something and putting people in a position that I believe in. Firmly from the bottom of my heart, I think that this is something that people need to do. And I think that shows through in the way that I talk about this and help people with this process. I understand it's new. Most people haven't done precious metals before. And far be it from me to push them off a ledge until they're ready. So my approach is going to be very dramatic in terms of information and explanation, and it's going to move at the pace that people feel comfortable for. So very, very much consultative, not transactive, not pushy, nothing like that.
Thank you. And obviously you have all the knowledge. I think our audience can see that. And I place my trust and confidence in you. Listen, folks, it's very, very, very important for those with investable assets. Again, let me say this to the point of gold and silver. Let me go there because we got to wrap this show up. Go to module, I think it's module 3. It's spelled out on a nice little schedule. It's very easy. wealthcoachuniversity.com. It's my website. Study Understanding Precious Metals module. It's about 23 minutes long. In there, I indicate some of the pitfalls that you must be aware of before you buy gold and silver. Paper versus tangible, bullion versus semi-numismatics. Now, look, if you like to collect things collectible that you might make an extra premium profit on down the road, as collectibles sometimes can do, by all means, buy collectibles. But if you look at which the firm offers, if you're looking to protect against what we've discussed in this show, the hedge against inflation, the declining dollar, the massive growth, and the number 1 asset class in the world, 100% growth this year. Hello, why didn't your advisor tell you about that? Because they don't sell tangible. They sell the paper proxy. And they're going to sell you a song and a dance there. Listen to the module. I've laid down a dozen or so minefields. It's not all metals deals are created equally, and not all precious metals are equal. You've got to get informed before you make your moves. People have been contacting me. I get about 100 emails a week. I can't answer all of them, but and I've just done the master class with Empower 2000. I did a group Q&A. I'm doing another group Q&A in 2 weeks from now to wrap up that venture. But one of the questions that keep coming across is, hey, I already bought these semi-numismatics. What do I do? Well, Bill, I'd like you, this will be the last question, and then we're going to run a very brief but important announcement. Then I'll be back to close out the show. I want to ask you this, Bill. Those that bought the semi-numismatics that really didn't want collectibles have overpaid with the hope they make that money back later, and they would prefer pure bullion, 99.99% pure bullion, bars of coins, gold or silver, for the reasons we've laid down very well in this show, thanks to you and Will. Those that already have them, they're asking me, well, what can I do to unwind that? This is the answer I have provided. I hope I was close in the vicinity of accurate. I think you can spell it out for me. First off, folks, I don't know if there is a pedal back solution for you. I will state that. But what I did provide in the Empower 2000 group coaching I did yesterday, my thought process was this: if you're just looking for bullion and you want, for the reasons we've stated, and you've got a stack of these semi-numismatics, first off, a lot of the firms that sold it to you, they won't buy it back. Okay, so there's a red flag. But could they shop companies, perhaps yours and or others, and find the lowest bidder who will buy it back at the least amount of commission, and perhaps make a commitment? Let's say they called you. Would your firm buy it back at a negotiated commission, or maybe no commission, in exchange for them committing to buying from you what they need? Turn that semi-numismatic in, take your losses, and recoup them pretty darn fast by buying a boatload of silver bullion or some gold bullion. Is that a feasible strategy, or am I barking up the wrong trees, if you want, Will?
No, you're absolutely correct. That's why, when I start with people, it's always about understanding, who every individual person is, and laying out all of the different because I got it. Gold and silver, again, this is new to people. They're not always going to know the differences between this, that, and the other thing. And so laying out all of the options, explaining what those are, and help picking a portfolio. That even down to, are we doing, more gold, more silver, and explaining, putting together a portfolio that's going to be winning for them. My goal for someone is that they're not, the portfolio is good not just for 6 months, but for 6 years, 10 years. That this portfolio. So we want to get it right the first time. And if there's someone that has a portfolio and is looking at it and said, you know what, I got duped by basically a used car salesman on the other end of the phone that sold me this junk I never wanted. Absolutely. Really what you're doing is you're just unwinding. You're saying, you know what, I didn't get what I wanted the first time. I'm going to make it right the second time. And then frankly, as we talked about before, gold's kissing $60 right now. We're talking about, silver. We're talking about silver at $300. So of course, if you've taken some losses from an unscrupulous dealer in the past, that's tremendously unfortunate. But the place that we're talking about dwarfs that. And that's the thing I want to remind people and give them hope on, is that the production we're going to see out of metals will make this an afterthought. It's almost like you got on the train and that was right, but maybe you got on the wrong track. So we just got to get you over onto the right tracks, and we can absolutely unwind that and figure out the best possible solution for anyone that reaches out.
Thanks. Very encouraging for those in that situation. Folks, for those that haven't been following me and my work for years, that are coming aboard newly, this is a financial show, as you can clearly see. Global Financial Reset, for obvious reasons. This is the time for a show like this, and the great guests I bring on each and every week. But I also produce military and intelligence panels that you want to find out about all the other aspects of this war, non-financial by and large. And you can visit jmcbroadcasting.com for our broadcasting schedule. We got a brand new killer website coming out, reflective of what we've grown to and what we've become as this war moves forward. So visit jmcbroadcasting.com. And the last thing I want to say before we sign you off, Bill, is I've done my best, folks. I've written the book, Global Financial Reset. It's up on Amazon. We have this weekly show. We have these experts come on from various different aspects. to educate you, to inform you, empower you, and inspire you. The rest is up to you. It's not a spectator sport. Saving America is not a spectator sport, and saving your financial situation is not a spectator sport. And I hope we provide, it requires action. So give Bill a call. Again, buy gold, buy silver, buy now, but buyer beware. Call 1-800-200-4653 and talk with Bill Armour. You see him here on the screen. That's the guy you'll ask for. That's the gentleman you'll speak with. And he will fast track you after thorough consultation, understanding of your picture and situation, and his asset transfers team to help you get out of the system. It's a wonderful time. This isn't doom and gloom. This is great news. There's doom and gloom all around us, but we're the shining light in that. God's light is shining all over President Trump, the White Hats, the military, the Q team, and we the people, and people like Bill Armour. So give Bill a call. Thank you very much, Bill, for being here. It's been an incredible episode. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Stay safe, and God bless you. I'll be right back after this important announcement.
By now, you've come to the awareness that a great change is taking place. The battle of resets is no longer a distant headline. It's unfolding right before our eyes. The global financial reset is underway. But which way is it going? What's really happening behind the curtain? How will you not just survive, but thrive in this transition? And most importantly, who can you trust when danger lurks in plain sight? This is not the time to sit on the sidelines. Join John Michael Chambers in partnership with Empower 2000 for a free masterclass titled Global Financial Reset, Surviving and Thriving the Transition. Tuesday, November 18th from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This one-time only event will equip you with the clarity and insight needed to navigate the coming storm. Across the nation and around the world, people are asking the same questions. How do I protect and preserve my hard-earned assets? How do I make sense of what's happening in the financial system? How can I position myself and my family to not just endure, but emerge stronger? The window of opportunity is closing fast. In this powerful masterclass, you'll discover exactly what you need to know to stand strong, protect your assets, and goots. Get out of the system. The world is shifting, and the dawning of a new financial era is here. Register now by visiting wealthcoachuniversity.com. Click on the webinar promotional announcement. JMC looks forward to seeing you there. Where we go one, we go all. Global Financial Reset. Surviving and thriving the transition.
We'll be done with this broadcast in probably 3 or 4 minutes. I do want to mention to we had 2 producers to do the show live with us here. Sandy, make a note, please, to send me a text as a reminder to pull that promo, since the masterclass has already taken place. But it's still important to note, it's up on the website for you. You can watch it now, okay? Even though you can't register it, it's already taken place. Segments of it, and the key segments have been recorded, and it's up on wealthcoachuniversity.com and jmcbroadcasting.com's homepage. You can click on the masterclass and view it. That's one way to continue your education so you're empowered before you make decisions. The second is this book you see on the screen. There's tremendous opportunity to prosper. Strategies, models, and proposed solutions are defined in the pages of this book. Just published about a month ago on Amazon.com. It's a must-read book, which can be shared with others. Christmas is coming. You might want to pick up some copies and get them to people you care about, so they too can get out of the system. So we've done so many different things, content that's been created through the masterclass, which you can view, through the book, which you can acquire, through the broadcast I do every week here, Global Financial Reset, with my incredible guests, as well as wealthcoachuniversity.com. The free modules are there. And if you still need help, give me a call. There's there's a method on the Wealth Coach University. You can click, you get on my calendar, you secure a block of hours or an hour with me, and I will get you through the minefield and get you out of the system. You can call Bill direct for your acquisition of gold and silver. So we've raised the issues of concern, we've raised the problems, but we're all solutions focused, and we're starting to talk a lot more about all the amazing things that are happening, because we're getting closer and closer to the dawning of the golden age. All right. So you can schedule a consult with me. I can only do 8 appointments a month because of my time zone shift. I'm in Thailand, 12 hours ahead of Eastern Standard, as well as the demands on my schedule. And they won't be available forever. We'll be pulling this opportunity out a little bit down the line as things shift in this war. I'm going to put my attention a lot on AI, the golden age, and some of the med beds and all the incredible things that are coming down the pike later. So that's really it. Next week, we have Rob Cunningham joining us. First time in the GFR. I'm very excited to meet Rob. He's going to be a very powerful guest. I got some very pointed questions for Rob. And also, many of our followers that know me and have been following me on the military and intelligence side know of SG and On. I've interviewed SG many times on many platforms, including Conversations of Consequence, which you can find on our website archives. SG and On will be joining us pre-recorded next week as well. So thank you all for being here. It's been a bit of an extended broadcast, just hitting on 2 hours. But wow. If you're not sharing this show out there, you're asleep at the wheel. Thank you for following and sharing our work. I'll see you next week live on the Global Financial Reset every Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. Stay safe, everyone, and may God be with you.